Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. My name is Joel Goldberg. Good to have you back. Hope you are surviving the heat of August. As this releases, maybe it's cooled down a little bit. I know that as I am recording this with my guest today, the heat index is supposed to be somewhere around 110. I've got an afternoon baseball game. No complaints, just some of the interesting parts that we deal with here in the Midwest. My guest is a guy that I've had the chance to get to know a little bit over the last few years with a group that we are in. I might talk about that briefly. But Carlos Antequera is currently the co-founder of Novel Capital. It's a Kansas City firm that leverages revenue-based financing to provide growth capital to early-stage software companies that don't fit the traditional venture or banking models. In the last 2 years, Novel has invested over $15 million in 40 companies across the U.S. and Canada. He's an active member of the prestigious Kauffman Fellows, Pipeline Entrepreneurial Fellowship, which we've talked about on this program before, on numerous boards. And I think, to me, what's very interesting about Carlos is the fact that he is now really helping companies in a way that he has experience, where he needed that help, that he has lived and walked in their shoes before, and really trying to make an impact on the lives of people and companies that maybe haven't traditionally had that opportunity, at least not equal opportunities. So I want to bring in to the podcast right now my friend Carlos Antequera. Carlos, how are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Joel.
It's good to have you on. I mentioned that we're in a club together. I suspect that if any of those guys are listening, it's like, a once a month hangout lunch type of thing with the boys called the BTC. So I just had to throw that out there right away, because you know that you and I, now it'll be more me than you absolutely hear it if we don't give them a little bit of love. But, you and I have had the chance to get to know each other a little bit there. But I love your story, and really a chance for me right now to dig a little bit deeper into it. So first and foremost, before we backtrack in your background and how you got to the States and how you're taking the world by storm, tell me about your company.
Yeah, so started Novel a couple of years ago, and we're excited, as you mentioned, to be helping entrepreneurs with capital. We identified, as you mentioned, based on my experience, that many entrepreneurs that are trying to grow their companies, especially in this new economy, that don't have the assets, they don't have the history that maybe traditional banks look for, or they don't have the super high growth that traditional equity VCs are looking for, really don't find the tools to continue to grow their companies. And many times that makes the journey much more difficult. It doesn't allow them to get the resources that they want, to hire the people that they need to grow as fast as they want. And so we're here to help those entrepreneurs with some innovative ways to provide capital that maybe haven't been available in the space before.
Well, and you lived so much of that life. And so I always say this really in all walks of life, in terms of leadership and in terms of being successful. We see it in baseball and in sports too, when the coach has walked in the player's shoes, not the superstar necessarily, but that role player. Not that the people you're working with are role players, but not everybody could be the billionaire, the CEO of the mega corporation, but so many are lost. And when you have someone that has walked in those shoes before and can say, hey, I've been there, I know what this is like, and then we'll tell your story in a second, but that has to be so helpful. But you're not just, some big name up in an office that's throwing out money in a transactional way. Well, there's obviously a lot of that goes on, but that you've been there before, and I'm wondering how much that enables you to connect.
Yeah, definitely. That's a huge part, right? It's just having the empathy for the entrepreneurial journey, recognizing that it's a difficult thing. Sometimes when you look at TechCrunch or the news, it seems like everybody with a good idea is getting millions of dollars, and you just need to basically, have a good product and show up with energy, and magic will happen. And the reality is that that's not enough. in the venture equity market, less than 1% of companies on a yearly basis get institutional venture capital. And when you think about the number of new businesses that get started in the US every day, over 500,000 businesses, well, the math's not that hard, right? So your chances are very small. And to your sport analogy, the odds, I believe, to get institutional venture capital are less than if you are a college basketball player to get drafted by the NBA, right? So I think that's 1.5%. Getting institutional venture capital is less than 1%. So that just gives you a sense of the difficulty. So now it doesn't mean that it's not the right opportunity or right tool for many people, definitely, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't dream big and try to do some of those things, but it's just not for everybody. And so the key is how do you have the right tools in front of you to go along that journey, and maybe sometimes it just takes a little longer to get there, but you need help along the way.
I'm so glad you said that about the dreaming part, because whatever the profession, especially if it's one where the odds are stacked against you, you're going to be told, you're probably never going to make it, or don't try this. And that one always bugged me because, and I've never lived in your world and what you do, but the television game is pretty impossible to get into. And most people get out because they don't see an opening, or they're told they're never going to make it. I had no business getting in any more than the next kid coming out of college, but I was able to knock down some doors, and eventually, 26 years later, I'm here. But the odds were stacked against me. If I had listened to what people told me, I was never going to get in. There are so many dreams out there and dreamers out there that could very easily disappear and go into something they don't like, or whatever it is. So I think you were one of those people. I mean, you came over as was it high school or right before college to the United States?
Yeah, I came here for college. Yeah.
So you come over here for college to the States. What was that process? Young kid growing up in Bolivia, I believe, and now you are living. I don't know if it's the American dream, the Bolivian dream, whatever dream, but you're living everybody's dream in the sense that you've been successful and you've been able to provide for your family, and you're leading a good life. The teenage Carlos coming over to the United States, put me into your shoes and your mindset at that point.
Yeah, definitely. My story, as you mentioned, starts in Bolivia. I was born there and grew up there. And growing up, we had the fortune to have an uncle, my mom's brother, that was living here in the U.S. in Kansas. And as I was finishing up elementary school, he invited my mom and us to come over and applied for our visa. As you might know, the migration process is challenging, and what appeared to be a next year deal was a next year, the following year, and the following year, and it took 8 years later, when I'm graduating high school, to finally the process to come to a positive conclusion. But that's how I was able to land in Kansas. My original aim, I always dreamed about coming to study computer science in Miami. It ended up in Topeka, Kansas, not quite the same place, but it worked out, I think, for everybody, and had the opportunity to, for the folks that are, in the area, to Washburn University, became an Ichabod, and had the opportunity to experience, just kind of life in the Midwest, not necessarily what I knew from Bolivia. You hear about Chicago, you hear about New York, you don't hear about Topeka, Kansas. But it was a great experience. Side note, I was even able to join a fraternity there, and met guys from, Effingham, Centralia, all these little towns around Kansas, and really had a very, I think, unique experience. They even taught me to country dance. That was definitely not in the plans, but it also showed me, I think, kind of the openness and the warmth of people in the Midwest, and I think it gave me a good flavor of an opportunity to make this kind of my long-term home. And 20 plus years later, I'm here in Kansas. Yeah, it's a great experience. And as you mentioned, yeah, definitely living the dream, being able to not only go to college here, have the opportunity to get that education, and then later start my own company.
It's an incredible journey, and I know one that's still going, but it's interesting to me too. I mean, a wrong turn on the way to Miami ends up in Topeka, not really a wrong turn, but that's certainly not the way that you envisioned it. But yet, I think being here as long as you have, I assume you feel like a Midwesterner, right? I mean, you've spent as much time here
Yep.
as you did in Bolivia growing up. I'm sure there's incredible identity if you're able to go home to see family or anything like that. But how much do you identify with the Midwest?
Yeah, definitely. This is home. I had the opportunity to move away several times, and Kansas City is home. As you mentioned, the people, the networks. I wouldn't be here without the support of many organizations and many people along the way. And I really appreciate that. And as much as I can, I try to kind of give back to the community, to younger entrepreneurs, to mentor folks, and to whatever extent possible, be involved and supportive of other things in the community.
So before we dig a little bit deeper into novel, let's talk about your background, because you put in all the work, you did everything to set yourself up. You know what you're talking about in the technology world. I mean, certainly more now than then, right? I mean, we're all smarter now than we were then, but I know that you ran into challenges along the way and no's along the way. We all do. But I think what I'm getting at is the inequity, the lack of opportunity. You already talked about it. That the stat that you mentioned before about the MBA kind of blows my mind. Now, when you add in that situation for an immigrant, for someone of color, and a lot of, I've heard so many stories, oftentimes from some of the athletes that I know too, of parent. I mean, the one that I think about a lot, and I wrote about it in my book, is Raul Ibanez, who was a great baseball player and retired now. And he was born in the Bronx, New York, but his dad was a chemist in Cuba. And back in the early 70s, you didn't have to defect. You could buy your way out if you worked for the government. And his dad was a very successful chemist and went and picked sugarcane in the fields and came to the United States and worked lower level jobs, even though he was highly qualified to have been able to do anything, and he just wanted to provide for his family. So I don't mean to generalize, but I know that the odds are stacked against aspiring entrepreneurs, aspiring professionals who, without a doubt, in my opinion, would make this country and the world a better place. What did you run up against?
Yeah. I think overall, I've been very fortunate in my experience here in the U.S. But naturally, as you mentioned, as you come in, you have to learn a new language, right? So just that as a first barrier, and a new way of living, new customs, and get used to different things, new foods. Interestingly enough, to your point, some people that are not super familiar with Latin America, they think it's kind of a uniform entity. Before I came to Topeka, Kansas, I didn't know what a tortilla was, right? In Bolivia, you eat bread. So even kind of those little things, and now I love Mexican food, right? But it's just kind of going through those experiences definitely add, I think, to your grit, to the perseverance that you can have later, and that I think has served me well on the entrepreneurial journey, which requires a lot of grit and perseverance. And as you said, you get a lot of no's, you get a lot of areas that you make mistakes, and you have to kind of get up again and continue. And so those kind of formative years early in the US definitely have served me well, I think.
So you mentioned you went to Washburn, and then I know you also continued your studies, completed your MBA. When did things start to kick in terms of your entrepreneurial endeavors?
Yeah. Actually, after I graduated from college, I with my computer science degree, I started as a software developer. Then I got my MBA at KU. Towards the end of that process, the entrepreneurial bug started bothering me and eventually bit me, right? And decided to start what at the beginning was an internet consulting company in the early 2000s that eventually evolved into Netchemia, which was the software company I co-founded and was the CEO for 14 years. And that was an interesting challenge because growing up in Latin America, your family wants you to be an engineer. My dad wanted me to be a doctor, and they want you to just have a steady job at a good company with a good salary and benefits, and just do the work and have a long career. And that was definitely a different way to change your career. Very few people, even nowadays, I think very few people tell their kids, "Hey, go be an entrepreneur." Right? That's normally not on the list of professions that folks want their kids to do or be. Except in a few cases, I think. So that was a big jump, a leap of faith in a way. And then starting that, being able to build a software company that focused on providing HR talent management solutions for school districts. And as you mentioned, during that journey, one of the things that I learned was that as you're growing your company, you need additional capital to continue to grow, to accelerate that growth if there's that opportunity. And I did what I learned at my MBA classes and developed a business plan, went to my local friendly bankers. And, that's when I learned that if you don't have a building, a collateral, or if you're not willing to put your house as a personal guarantee, and if you don't have a house, then you don't really have a choice, then you cannot get capital, or at least meaningful capital, because there's not that hard collateral or asset that those folks want. And then some folks that had experience in the software world say, "Hey, what you need to do is go raise money from VCs, from angel investors." And at that point, went through the rounds for about 8 months trying to do that, and ended up empty-handed because folks said, "Well, education is not that sexy, really." At that point, they wanted e-commerce stuff, apps, and that was just not what they were looking for. So had to get good at really growing organically and selling, really demonstrating the value of the product in the market. And that experience definitely informed really kind of how I understood the capital markets to work at that point in time. And um, definitely informed, as we started Novel, some of the challenges we were trying to solve for entrepreneurs.
So going back just a little bit, because you obviously were very successful at Netchemia, and that was, I think if I understand it correctly, that was technology meets education, right? I mean, that was developing.
Yeah, it was software for school districts to help them hire and manage the HR processes for everybody within the school district, right? Our thesis was, in order to have the best possible education for students, you need to have the best people, starting from the janitor to the principal to the teacher to the superintendent. And if you are not able to identify and hire and provide development opportunities to the best people, then the likelihood that the students will have the best education is lower. And so that's what our software would allow school districts to do, is identify, hire, and hopefully retain the best possible people.
Well, I think it's interesting too when you talk about that. Everyone from the janitor to whatever, the superintendent, and everyone in between. I mean, that's so much of what I talk about too in terms of a culture. It involves everyone. It's not just the superstar. That's it's a sports analogy if I want it to be, and it could be any walk of life really. But I was reading in your bio that Netchemia was named one of Kansas City's best companies to work for, and that has to be everything you're talking about, right? I mean, if you're gonna if you're going to walk the walk, that old saying, I guess. So when you see your company getting those type of accolades and you're trying to spread that with others, that had to have meant the world to you.
Yeah, definitely, and still carries on with me, right? So I believe strongly that people and culture are super important in any organization, and obviously in school district setting, in an educational setting, as well as in the business setting. And if you don't have the right folks with the right mentality, and you don't treat them well, and you don't foster a culture that can help them grow and develop, they're not going to stay very long, or you're not going to be able to attract the best folks. Just the perfect analogy with sports, right? And even to that analogy, right? Sometimes you have those superstars that have their egos that are they might be great and they have the skills, but their egos sometimes overshadow the work of the team. And that was one of the things that as we grew the organization from 3 of co-founders to over 120 employees, constantly had to be vigilant, and sometimes you had to sacrifice that super skilled talented resource and say, hey, you don't fit, you are causing more harm in the long term than the victories or the wins in the near term. But you have to be vigilant of that culture and make those tough decisions.
So you sold Netchemia in 2015, I believe.
Yep.
And then a couple years later, you co-found Novel. Tell me about the process of selling,
Mm-hmm.
and then the process of restarting, or how you came up with, okay, this is the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the opportunity to sell the company after scaling it, and we had about 3,000 plus districts around the country that used our software, very successful. And there was a private equity firm that had a similar vision of how we could scale the company, and there was a good match, a good opportunity to join our forces together. They had the capital that allowed us to accelerate scaling, and we had the right products and understood the market well to be able to partner with that. But a couple of years later, after that transaction, decided to take a little bit of a break from the entrepreneurial life. I told my wife, I was going to take a year or 2 years break, and I think she knew better. But a few months later, ideas were already percolating, and not too long after that, through another Kansas City connection here from the startup world, that now is my co-founder, Keith Harrington. We identified that, as I was talking about my experience of building a company and the challenges on identifying capital, in particular in the Midwest at that point, that the challenges hadn't, from a capital perspective, had not gotten dramatically better after like 15 years, right? I was talking to other fellow entrepreneurs, and the stories that I kept hearing were very similar on the difficulties on growing your company and obtaining the right type of capital at the right time. And my co-founder, Keith Harrington, he came from the VC equity world here in the Midwest, and through his experience of many years, he got a little frustrated of trying to find kind of those unicorns and finding lots of good entrepreneurs with good products that he had to say no to. And he didn't know where to send them. He didn't know how to help them. And so as we put our heads together, he identified this new, more flexible way to provide capital called revenue-based financing, in which instead of taking ownership of a company when you provide investment and then expecting the company to be sold to recover your investment, we recover the investment through small royalty or small payments directly out of the revenue that the company has. And so through that gives us much more flexibility on the number and type of entrepreneurs we can work with, and definitely provides more entrepreneurs with the opportunity. And so once we collaborated on the concept and talked to entrepreneurs and felt that this was going to be a good positive tool to add to the mix of tools that the Midwest was having with some other organizations, we started Novel.
It seems like such an obvious solution, and so I don't know if others didn't, or were others lacking the foresight, or they just didn't want to mess with it because it's easier to do things the way they always have? And I mean, that's a problem for all of us. Well, we've always done it this way. I mean, to me, it looked like there was a big lane that opened up that was there for someone that had the desire to do it and put a little bit, not a little bit, but a lot into it and make some sacrifice.
Yeah, definitely. And when you think about it, right, the traditional venture capital equity world, for as much as it invests in a very super innovative companies, it doesn't innovate itself a lot, right? The origins of the venture capital world go back to the whaling expeditions, right, in the 1800s, I believe, or maybe earlier. So it really it hasn't evolved much from the earlier concepts. And now I think over the last few years in particular, as folks on their personal life have gotten used to the evolution of how they manage their finances with different apps and different things that make it super easy to do a lot of things that you couldn't do before, right, including investing and other things. They're looking now for similar ways to manage their businesses with that ease and with that simplicity. So I think the kind of several things are kind of coming together at the right time.
Yeah, well, I think we all know we need to innovate. We need to constantly be pivoting. We need to change. Nothing ever stays the same. It's just sometimes it's too late for a lot of people, and it's easier, it's safer sometimes not to do that. And so, you went out there obviously and figured something out that others probably now wish that they had, but it's working out obviously really well. Let me go to the baseball themed questions. In your long now successful career, what is the biggest home run that you have hit so far, Carlos?
Yeah, I think it's taking the jump into the entrepreneurial journey. I think it has made me grow incredibly as a person, professionally. I have been very fortunate, as I said, to have many mentors along the way that have enriched my life. Had the opportunity to know a lot of people outside of my company and as part of my company that have really made me better. And it's just an experience that I wouldn't change for anything, and that has been giving me also great opportunities for me and my family also to do well. So I just been very fortunate to have taken that that turn at that time.
Yeah, the beauty of the entrepreneurial journey, where anything's possible. It really is.
Yep.
Second question: the swing and the miss. We all have those. Every now and then somebody says they don't have them, but we all have swings and misses. What's the biggest swing and miss, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I feel that I'm in a way I'm constantly swinging and missing, but I think that's part of what I've learned to appreciate about the entrepreneurial journeys is being okay with that failure, right? You definitely have to learn from those failures and learn to move on, learn to dust yourself off. You cannot dwell too much into that because you have to keep going. So definitely part of the journey. One of the ones that comes to mind, though, is as we were building Netchemia, for example, there were a couple of products that we thought these are just easy home runs. We know what the problem is. We've talked to people, to the customer. They say they have the problem. Let's go build it. Let's put all the features, all the bells and whistles, and it didn't work out as expected. We missed some things, and I take those learnings, and in many cases to up and coming entrepreneurs, I try to remind them that don't get too enamored with your product, especially if you are if your background is technology. It's easy to say, hey, I have my mousetrap is so much better than the next thing. It's gonna sell by itself. And they end up keep tweaking, keep adding features, keep messing with the product when the problem is really they don't understand how to sell the product in the market. They don't understand how their buyer buys, what they can spend, who buys it, and the whole sales process. And in many cases, they fail because of that. And I'm sure you can remember many really, really good products that really never made it.
Oh, absolutely. And, as you were saying this, I thought about something. My mind's always going here with all the speaking that I do, that really any conversation for me with a baseball player, a coach, an executive, uh, is possibly something interesting that people can learn from. And as you were saying this, it made me think of a conversation I had yesterday. And not everything needs to be a sports analogy, but I was talking to one of our pitchers who's 34 or so years old, and I was asking him about the young rookie on the team, and could he relate to him, and he said absolutely, and essentially what he said was that when you come up and you're a superstar, a potential superstar, you have all the talent just as much as anybody else, and then you get humbled and you wonder why it's not working out. He went through it. This other kid has gone through it and will go through it again. He says you start to learn over time that my talent's not enough.
Yep.
I could in baseball, I could throw 100 miles an hour. I have the greatest curveball. Well, guess what? The guys that are hitting it know how to do that. And not only do they know how to do that because they're experienced, they know how to prepare better, and they know, how to get inside your head in terms of seeing patterns and formulas. And that over time with experience, you learn how to play that game back. You learn how to better prepare. You learn that your talent alone is not enough. And I think as you were describing that, that's what I thought of in the similarity, that it's not enough just to be the most talented person. You have to know the tricks of the trade, which obviously you now know, and still learning. We're all always still learning, but it's a roundabout way of me getting to the fact that this entrepreneurial journey is truly a journey. There's never a straight line to it.
Definitely. Yeah. And as you mentioned, you never really stop learning and figure out the next thing, but hopefully some of those lessons then stick with you, and you can carry those forward and share that with other folks.
With others, the power of mentorship. Last baseball themed question: small ball. I know that you are a culture guy with the accolades that you have received, and the way that you have built relationships and taking care of people. What is small ball to you? The little things that add up to success.
Yeah, I think related to people and culture, there's so much stuff we could talk about, but I think at a high level, really, in my experience, to build a long-lasting company that really builds value and accomplishes great things, you have to have the right people, and I think people know that. So you have to be focused on that. And in terms of culture, there are several things that I think are important, but one of the key ones alongside of what we're talking is we have, for example, these values at Novel that we like all employees to embody and be focused on. One of those is lifelong learning. And it's more about than just, go get the degrees and the schooling. It's really about, are you aware, and in many cases, self-aware every day about what you're experiencing, what things are happening around you, that you can identify when something is amiss or when there is an opportunity, and you have the energy to chase that and figure out what the new, better way to do is, and take that learning and not only take it for yourself, but maybe share it with the rest of the team. And I believe if you can do that, and you can do that at a certain speed, that's what in many cases separates the good companies, the great companies from the good companies, is how fast can you learn and adjust from those learnings and implement those and execute them.
Couldn't agree with you more. And I think that the last piece of that's an important one too, is not just to continue to learn, but to then share it with others, which makes the company, your world, your network a better place. Great way to add value as well. All right, Carlos, 4 final questions as we round the bases. You don't know what these are, but they'll be fun and you'll enjoy them. Did I read that your wife is a children's author?
Yes, she's definitely super talented in that area. She writes fiction for kids. In the category is called middle grade, about 8 to 12-year-olds. I think it's her sweet spot. Yeah.
So, do you ever help her with that, or vice versa? I mean, she clearly has the creativity. Not that you don't too, but I don't know what that is like. But that's an incredible talent. I know that.
Yeah, definitely. She's fantastic at what she does. She's had I think she's on her 8th book, and most of her books have won many awards. So definitely much more talented than I am. A funny story, when I had after I sold my company and I was trying to take that year or so break. I attempted to provide some help around the marketing, and what I learned is that she's much more disciplined than I am in some areas, and so long story short, I missed a couple of meetings that she had scheduled, so I ended up getting fired as her marketing intern. So I learned let her do her thing. She's great at what she does, and whenever I can, I support her, of course. But yeah, she can handle it on her own.
Not only did she figure you'd get back to work after you sold quicker than what you said, she might have been ready for you too as well.
Yeah, I think she was.
All right, that's good stuff. Second question, we'll go with a culture question, not about business, but about your upbringing and your background. Well, a two-part question. One, I think this is rhetorical on my part. How many people that you come into contact with actually know where Bolivia even is?
Yeah, good question. I think it's getting better. It's getting
It's getting a
better,
little better.
but but definitely a few years ago, you get is that in Asia, right? Not even right continent. So it's definitely getting better. And on the coast, obviously, it's a little bit more usually cosmopolitan cities, and more diversity. It's getting better, and I try to add my 2 cents whenever I can to highlight the good things about Bolivia, and hopefully inspire some people to take a trip a little farther south than they're used to.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's and the second part of the question then is that I think everyone on a map could find Brazil, or
Yeah, yeah,
Chile, or Peru, and they've heard of Bolivia, but they may or may not be surprised where it's at. If their geography is good, okay, they have an idea. Probably
yeah,
most people that you come into contact with have not been to Bolivia. So, what is
yeah.
life like in Bolivia?
Yeah, so to help everybody get a quick lay of the land, it's in the heart of South America, so that's easy to remember. It's landlocked, so don't have access to an ocean, and that's my easy reason to blame why I have not learned to swim, because I had no access to ocean. And in La Paz, where I grew up, it's mountainous, kind of like Colorado-ish. I would say 50s to 70s all year long, so it doesn't get too cold, doesn't get too hot in general. But again, not much of an incentive to go to the pool and that with those temperatures. But you get really a great variety from the Andes Mountains, and La Paz is the highest capital of the world. So a little trivia for the folks that listen to the podcast. And you get all the way to the tropical forests of the Amazon and everything in between. So it's not as touristy, so you won't get the kind of the resorts or things like that you might get in the Dominican Republic. But if you like adventure and kind of more the raw culture, it's just a great place to experience. And I would advise anybody that has a little bit of an adventurous heart to go visit.
Still get back a lot or no?
Yeah, I have a lot of family. My dad's still there, and I am averaging every other year. But I would like to go a little bit more often. It's not that easy from Kansas City. Hoping that with the new airport, we're going to have more direct flights to more places, and so that'll help. I get back there usually every other year at least.
All right, third question as we round the bases, what has the Kauffman Fellow program meant to you?
Um, so for those that you don't know about the program, it's a program that originally got started by the Kauffman Foundation many years ago. Now it's spun into its own entity, but the goal was to really foster a more diverse set of venture capital investors that were more humanistic and focused, really, that as you invest the capital and you're trying to generate wealth. You take into account really, everybody in the process, the investor, the entrepreneur, and everybody that's involved to really make it a win for everybody, and do it with the right focus, and foster the right things. And so it's a program that has fellows from around the world, so you get just the different points of view from investors around the world. Everybody in their own right, is a superstar and has many accolades and have accomplished many things. So just getting a great set of smart people that are willing to share, that are willing to learn with you, and everybody trying to accomplish kind of the same goal. It's been a fantastic journey, and it's a long life fellowship, which is a big part, I think, of the value, which not only you get in the initial part of the program, but really as you continue your professional career, grow with everybody else.
It's awfully prestigious group of people to be a part of, I know, for you and everyone involved, which is amazing. Last question, the walk-off, and we've talked a lot about your company. If anyone wants to find out more too, they could go to the website novelgp.com. What's the best part about this? Because for you, not running the company, but what you are able to do. I was looking at the website, and of course you've got testimonials like everybody else does. But I saw one that I know why you guys picked it. Excuse me, it's from a guy named Ezzy Carlson. It was the first one listed on there in Palo Alto, who says it's not hard to find an investor lender, but it is rare to find two guys like Carlos and Keith that are genuinely interested in helping their partner companies. Their advice and help is just, if not more valuable than the investment. It can feel alone at the top, and they fill a void as mentors to me and my management team. And reading that, it struck me that's, from what I can tell and what I know, that's everything about who you are. What does something like that mean, and what is your favorite part about this?
Yeah, I think it's what you mentioned is really connecting with those entrepreneurs that are trying to accomplish great things, and sometimes they're a little earlier in their journey, and how you can help them with capital that they need to execute on the things they want to execute, but those other intangibles about sometimes, they're making those difficult decisions for the first time in the business. They're hiring their first vice president. Sometimes they're having to let go of the first person they have to let go after maybe they co-founded or were one of the earlier employees. And those things are things that you don't normally learn in school, right? And having somebody that you can just kind of run the idea by, even if you don't get a precise answer, but there's an element of knowledge. There's an element of almost just moral support, and that's very rewarding, right? And in addition to that, if you can provide capital so they can execute on the things that they want, when it's a good entrepreneur that it's driven and it's hardworking, and they're gonna make good things happen, in terms of their product, in terms of what they deliver, in terms of creating jobs. The product and building the company is rewarding, but those relationships and helping people along the way is rewarding as well.
Well, it sounds like it. I know that you guys are making a big impact on a lot of people's journeys and lives, and enjoying all these moments along the way. I know there'll be a lot more too. I say this to so many of my guests that those entrepreneurs, those serial entrepreneurs, those people that are always looking to find new solutions, they're never done. It's like with, when you said you're going to take some time off, and your wife knew, and it's not going to be that long, because I think that's probably who you are, which is a good thing. So again, if people want to learn a little bit more, novelgp.com. I will give that shout out again to the BTC in case our guys are listening. They might be. Carlos Antequera has been my guest, and incredible story with so much success and more to come. Carlos, I appreciate you spending time on Rounding the Bases.
Thank you so much, Joel. Enjoyed it.